Ladies and gentlemen, please remove all hats and headgear and enjoy tonight's event. So we have 3 guest speakers with us here today. Outstanding women in music. We got Dr. Lucas, Dr. Bovin, and Dr. Baumanis. And I'll let you all introduce each other. Starting with Dr. Lucas.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Lucas, and I'm a musicologist. I teach music history and music theory here at TMOOC, so probably worked with some of you before, and if not, you may have seen me around. But my specialization is research on the Hungarian composer Béla Bartók.
So hi, Dr. Amy Bovin. I'm the interim associate director of band and a visiting assistant professor of music here, and I know pretty much everyone in here, so hi. Hi. My research specialization is in women in band and gendered experiences in band, as well as music literacy.
Hello, my name is Dr. Julia Baumanis. I'm the assistant director of bands at Rutgers University, which is why I'm not with you tonight in person. I direct the symphonic band here. I teach a little bit of pep band. I do music education courses. And my research is about gender issues in collegiate band. That's actually how I know Dr. Bovin a little bit. But also developing an electric baton as a tool to help future conductors learn the technique. As we know, technology is kind of intertwined a little bit more in the music world, so that's my latest project, to develop this electric baton that's more of a training tool for growing conductors.
Okay, so from here, it's an open panel. So with our 3 guest speakers here, they're here to answer any questions you guys may have. So if you have any questions, you can form a line here and speak into this mic. And yeah, they'll take turns answering any questions.
We're gonna take this.
Oh yes.
Because we're over 30.
That's good. Okay, you may start.
Hi, Dr. Baumanis? Baumanis. Could you go into more detail about the electric baton?
I can try. So this was a failed dissertation number 2 for me. Essentially, my conducting teacher, Pat Dunnigan and Richard Clary at Florida State University, which was where I got all of my degrees from, one day in wind ensemble, one of them got frustrated and stormed off the podium and said, "I wish that my conducting students would just have something that sounded the way they looked, because they look ridiculous, so it would sound ridiculous too." And I thought, research project. Essentially, I created using the infrared laser that's within a Wiimote, a Nintendo Wiimote. I created this device that picks up your gesture using that camera. So, you know, if you ever played like Wii Golf or Wii Tennis, it's the same technology, except for now with a conductor's baton, all you have to do is wrap a tiny styrofoam ball in reflective bike tape and stick it on the end of your baton of your choice and point it to this mechanism that I built with the help of a computer program person at Florida State University. I was particularly frustrated with my technique. I used to think that this meant legato, so if you could imagine a baton attached to it, it's clearly not, and it took me a while to understand that this is more the shape that I wanted for legato and how to get there. So instead of the vertical plane. So at first you could see what you were doing, because if you went out of the boundaries, the lights would happen if you went out of the boundaries too. You could hear if you went out of the boundaries because it had an audio feedback. And eventually, as the program goes on, you start to take away those little tools to help you. So you might take away the sound. So it might just be flashing lights to show that you're out of the boundaries. And then you take away the sound and the flashing lights and see if you could be in the boundaries without any sort of helpful hints or tools. And then I put it through a computer program, and it spits out data. It says you were 80% successful staying within the boundaries and stretching out using a legato phrase. I ran it through what's called a pilot study, which is where you just get a small group of participants to just really kind of test drive it. And it was effective for all the people who worked on it. They had a more smooth, stretched horizontal beat pattern at the end of it. So I wrote a paper based on the results of the pilot study. And once you do that, the next step is to get more participants and to expand it and see if it's really effective for a bunch of people. But as I handed in my paper on this pilot study to my professor who was helping me, he said, "Julia, I have bad news. Your computer program, whose name is Atari Kawasaka, had a stroke. And he's okay. However, he had a stroke to where he reverted back to his original language and at an elementary level. So he was only at that point, instead of having English and all this coding that he did for us in English, he reverted back to only understanding and being able to communicate with elementary level Japanese, which is his primary language. So my program is stuck in his laptop at Florida State University because nobody understands his coding because it's so personal to him. It's so special to how he did it. So I'm in the process now that I'm at another R1 institute, a big research institute, where I can find a team of people here at Rutgers University to basically build it from scratch. My ultimate goal is to make this into something that you could use using your phone camera. And instead of the Wiimote, you can use the camera that's on your phone, and you can go home and say, all right, I'm going to work on this today using my phone camera, and the program's already an app in your phone. So you can see how effective you were in doing this exercise. And then, expanding the exercises beyond legato conducting, staccato, marcato, all that stuff. So that's in the works. And hopefully it will help a lot of conducting students, because I used to get frustrated when my conducting teachers told me, go home and practice in the mirror. I'm like, cool. Nobody else is in the bathroom practicing with me, hopefully, so I don't know what's good and what's not. So this hopefully will be a tool to help that develop.
Okay, so my next question is, this is for all three of you actually, so when did you guys notice that there was a difference in like the way that musicians have been dominated by male or versus female? Was it, for example, was it for your first time choosing your instrument or the first day in band? For some people I know it was until they started pursuing their degree in music. So, and then after you finish explaining your story, do you have any suggestions for musicians in promoting women in music?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. So I guess the first time that I consciously knew that there was something that was a little bit different was when I became a high school band director. So straight out of my undergrad, I got a head DOB job at a high school, a smaller high school in Connecticut. And I was at a region festival, and I was sitting there just like kind of in the audience or whatever, and I was watching my students on stage, and someone came by and was like, oh sweetie, you need to be on stage right now. And I was like, and I didn't even think about it. I was like, wait, why? Did I sign up for something? Like, am I supposed to be moving a chair? Am I supposed to be like, what am I supposed to be doing? And I was like, was there a sign-up sheet? And they were like, no, aren't you in the band? I was like, no, I'm a band director. And they were like, that's funny, you need to be on stage. And they didn't believe me. And I was like, why aren't they believing me? I was like, no, like literally those are my students on stage. I'm here, and like this is, my thing. So One of the band directors was like walking by and saw this whole conversation, and he happened to know me and was like, no, she's actually a band director, and this person apologized. And I was like, that was strange. And then we had our region directors meeting later, and I was the only female in the room. It was all men. And I was like, ooh, I get it now. And then I just started to think back to everything, and I still to this day have never had a female mentor. I've never had a female band director. I have only really seen men directing band the entire time. And so it's actually been in my DNA in like my whole life, but that was pretty much the moment that I really noticed it. And what was your second part? What could advice? Just
For promoting women in music for anyone, organizations, or as a person.
so promoting women in music is, program diverse composers, and you yourselves just get out there and just, help each other and help each other, your colleagues, and, anyone. There are so many underrepresented populations that are in this profession. And honestly, just as long as we continue to lift each other up, no matter your, identity, your background, or your gender, or anything, that just get out there and just help each other out and promote each other. And be there and don't assume is really the big thing, because there are so many people that just assume. Just like, how many people were at the pep band game on Saturday? How many people noticed I was not in the picture? Instead, the basketball coach would not talk to me. He walked right by me, shook Evan's hand, shook Jason's hand, shook Mr. Mancata's hand, walked right by me. I tried to put my hand out. He said, oh, can you take the picture for us? So then I started to take the picture for you guys, and then what did he do? He pulled in Evan and Jason and Mr. Mancata, and I stood there and took your picture. And then afterwards, I tried to go up and talk to him again, and he walked away. So, it's still going on, and that's just a thing, that's just an assumption. You saw this person handing there, I had 2 instruments with me, which, I have 2 instruments, wouldn't you even just think I should be there? But it's just don't assume. And that's what he did. The basketball coach just assumed that I was not part of the band in any way. So that could have easily be fixed by going out and talking to each other.
Okay, well, I've had a slightly different experience than what Dr. Bovin has had, and maybe I've just been kind of lucky. But my first band director was a female. And my high school band director was female, and she was a role model that I looked up to. I wanted to be a band director. I got my first degree in music ed, but and then I switched to music history. But I didn't notice that it was strange at that time, that the director of bands was a female. The first time I noticed that other people thought it was something to remark on was when I auditioned for All-State Band, and I was around all the other band directors who had brought their students, and my band director was had to become one of the boys, and so that was something I didn't expect. But I think what I was fortunate in my master's program. My advisor is a female scholar. She studies Czech music. And in my doctoral program, I also had several wonderful female mentors, including my advisor. And part of that is that I sought that out, but also I was lucky to be in a place where I could work with someone like that. But I did, especially in graduate school, what I found is that people in seminars would react differently to females speaking versus males. And what I noticed about that is that it didn't matter if it was a female professor or a male professor, people were treated a little bit differently. And it's just because we have certain roles that we grow up seeing modeled or seeing enforced, and so that happens, and I think we just have to be aware of that. So I think that's really important. The other thing I notice is that students react to female professors differently than male professors, and there have been studies about this. It's outside of my field of research, not the kind of research I do, but in any case, and it doesn't matter what the background of the student is in evaluations and things. Female professors are evaluated differently than males, and that's just something that we deal with. I've had all kinds of advice from my male colleagues about how to handle a classroom situation, and their advice just wouldn't work, I think, because students would respond differently to me than they would to that person. And I think it's a gender thing. But I would say that, like Dr. Bovin is saying, the best thing to do to promote women in music is to program music by diverse composers and support all of your colleagues. I think one thing that sometimes happens is that people feel they have to compete to get to a certain place, and that there might not be enough room for everybody in a particular position or something. But I think that's not a good way to think. I think there's enough light in the room to shine on everyone, and if we're just all helping each other and promoting each other, that can be an important part of helping more and more women succeed in our profession.
Yeah, I have kind of an in-between experience between Dr. Bovin and forgive me, I have forgotten the name of the woman who just spoke.
Dr. Lucas.
Dr. Lucas, thank you, thank you. I actually just, Women's Month is coming, right? I think, next month. I should know that, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. But I just did an article. I was just, I don't know. These things are very strange. I was just interviewed because I'm the first female band director in Rutgers history, and if you know anything about Rutgers history, it's one of the oldest academic institutions, being founded in 1766 as Queen's College. You're thinking about Alexander Hamilton and people like that being in this space. So it's very old, and I'm the first female band director, first female on conducting faculty here. And so they're giving me an interview, and they asked me the same question: when did you realize that there was such a disparity between the two binary genders, that being male and female, in our profession? I perhaps was naive or sheltered or just lucky. I didn't realize until I was teaching, and I was in my third-ish year of teaching, and I had never been told by anybody that because I was female, I was going to be this unicorn in our field. I just didn't make sense to me. I never had a female teacher, so I think maybe I was just blind to it. But I was sitting in a district band directors meeting, and the district president was a female. So I was very excited. I was like, oh yeah, one of the females in our district, and she's been teaching for a long time, so I'd love to pick her brain, and she just got elected to office. And we're sitting, and we had just had what we call, this is when I taught in Florida. I did my public school teaching in Florida. This is when we had just had what we called festival. I'm not sure what you'd call it there, but it's basically going and taking your ensemble and getting critiqued by judges, sort of like the big thing that you do with your students. And we had just had festival, and then we have a band directors district meeting afterwards, and everybody's, hey, congratulations, everybody did great. And this female district president says, okay, I want as a membership to talk about an issue that I'm very passionate about, and I would like for you all to take the survey so that I get to understand what everybody's thinking about this issue. And we're like, sure, not a problem. She hands out a piece of paper, and there's only one question. And the question is, what should female band conductors wear on stage? Mind you, I'm one of 3 females in the room. And I'm thinking, including the woman, the district president, I'm thinking, why? Okay. So my male colleagues look at it and they read it, and of course I see eyes looking at all the females, me being one of them. And I just felt exploited. And there's murmurings in the room, and somebody says, can you talk about this a little bit more. I'm a little uncomfortable telling my female colleagues what they should wear. And she says, you know what, I don't think you should be, because at the end of the day, they represent our district, and I'm tired of women looking a mess on the podium, which is what I saw at assessment. Remember, there's 3 of us in the room that are women, including herself. Come to find out, she really wanted us to all wear clothing that did not really hug in any areas. She wanted it to be dresses. I called it a moo-moo, not to her face, but she wanted us in like these, because I looked at what she wore on the podium. I like said, okay, Dana, what do you wear on the podium? Well, I wear the, it's professional. And that's when I kind of knew that there was this thing that had to do with being a female conductor. And I remember being so upset because I had gone into that meeting wanting to talk to her and pick her brain and like gather wisdom from this female mentor that I was going to have. And then being completely let down, that I didn't feel comfortable to talk to her. And I have not had a female band director or a teacher. I've had fantastic male mentors who have proven to me time and time again, it doesn't matter what you look like, and it doesn't matter where you come from. I'm the daughter of 2 immigrants. I'm first generation. My mother grew up in the Philippines, and my father's from Latvia. They like got together and made me, and it was never a problem. Who I was and who I couldn't help being, because this is what I am, was never a problem. But now that I'm on the other side and I see, and this gets to the what can we do to promote, more balance between anybody who wants to do this thing. Now that I'm on the other side of it and I work to get students those jobs, the best thing I could do is use my privilege of my position, because I have a good position now where people want to talk to me and hear what I have to say. That wasn't always the case. But I could use the privilege of my position to get the people who I think would be fabulous in that job there. But I also tell those people, and this is what my mentors told me, Julia, I will open the door for you. Pat Dunnigan said, I will use my white maleness to open the door. His words, not mine. I will use my white maleness to open the door for you, because you belong in there. But once you get there, what's going to keep you there is your grit and your hard work and your talent. So it's your job to make all that happen. And my job to move the crap out, move the stuff, out of the way that shouldn't be there, because you're this, and this. So what we can do is when you get, and notice I'm saying when, not if, when you get there and you have the privilege of being in power of some sort, to use that power for good, and to move those things out of the way for, the hard workers, and the people with grit, and the ones that are going to take this wonderful thing called music and use it for good in this world. That's our responsibility, and that's the way that I see hope in all of this, because it's still a major issue, and things that have happened to everybody on this panel still happen today. But if we do this, and if we break the cycle, those are going to become less and less and less and less and less.
My question is for all 3 women on the panel. Have any of y'all ever had experiences working with men who try to limit your creativity in the workplace?
Yes.
The short answer is yes. Trying to think of one good specific example. Well, for me, with my research, sometimes I've been expected to share some of my research with other people before it's published just by me. I don't know if many of you know how musicology works, but instead of performing, we put out papers and books and articles, and we publish our own work. And there is some collaboration, but mostly they're single author publications. And so I've had a couple of times where people found out work that I've found out about work that I'm doing before it's published, and they've said, well, this is really, you can just contribute to this other person's publication that's similar, and tried to sort of push me in that direction. But I will say I have had a lot of other male colleagues who've helped me a lot as well, so it's not all bad, but that has happened to me.
The other Dr. B, do you want to go?
Can you just repeat the question for me? It cut out on my end for a second. Sorry to make you walk again.
My question was if you had any experiences working with men who try to limit your creativity in the workplace.
Yes. I hate that it's yes.
Yeah.
It's also, to me, a lot of times, it's also tied to my age. I am younger in this profession. If you think about, if you ask, a preteen off the street, when you think of a maestro, what do they say? They don't see me. A lot of people don't see me. They don't see young, they don't see BIPOC, they don't see female, they don't see any of these kind of things. I actually experience more ageism than anything. I personally love that I look this young, but I also understand that everywhere I go, I'm mistaken for a student a lot of times. There was an incredible, terrible flood that happened when I moved here to Rutgers the first week of classes. And there's this river called the Raritan River, which our university is on, and it flooded like astronomical. People were put out of their homes, and my apartment is very close to the river, so I was evacuated, and I had to come sleep in my office with my 2 cats and my husband. And a security guard came around and thought I was a student that broke in. I was like, no, that's my name. That's my name on the door. I swear I'm a real person. And while that's okay, and that's, kind of a funny story of that, a lot of people, I think, take my youth for inexperience, unknowledgeable, incapable, and I find that a lot of my friends who are my champions, who are older, have to explain, no, she's this age, but like she actually can do the thing. And it's been to both women and men and a lot of that. So I experience ageism a lot, I think, more so than I do discrimination because of my gender. But I think I'm also an anomaly. I think that I've lucked out. I think more people, one of the things that I'm doing is with a colleague of mine collecting stories of women band directors and their experiences and putting it together in this resource document. If you went to TMEA and you met LaToya Webb from UT Austin, she was handing out business cards to say, hey, here's our card, see if you want to participate, take the survey. And I think Dr. Bovin took the survey, so I want to thank her for sharing her experience. But I'm finding as I read these experiences that I'm an anomaly. I lucked out, and that's sad to me. That's very sad to me because there are so many barriers unfairly placed on us because of our gender. But it's been more about the age thing for me. Luckily, that's weird to say, but there you go.
It's not really that weird to say, because in my dissertation, that's what I found also. So that the ageism was just as much as a problem, if not more in some cases, for especially female band directors than just gender. And I went and I took my survey, that was my dissertation, I sent it out to all band directors, like regardless of gender, age, or level, and I found the same thing with the ageism as well. But women are reporting it, or those who identify as women report it more than those who identify as men. And I have to agree that I think the ageism combined with the gender is what I've really experienced. I mean, almost every position that I've had, it's it's hard to get my voice heard. And, sitting, having a seat at the table, and there's a book about, get that seat at the table and have that seat at the table. And it's always been, not to the point that I would say I've been talked down to, but in some cases, yes, that it's really been challenging. I mean, I even had a colleague at one point right after I started my PhD that was like, oh, good, I'm really happy that you'll finally get to learn something. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, now that you get to go back and you get to like learn so you can, and then he just stopped. I said, so I can what? And he's like, well, so that you can participate in our conversations. And I was like, okay, I understand that you're older than me, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, I'm going back and I'm getting a PhD not because I want to be at the same level as you, and it's not really about levels, it's because I just want to learn more and I eventually want to end up at the university level. Like, that's why I'm doing it. So, it's been, I think almost every level to squash the creativity, it's just been, constantly being questioned. Why are you doing this? Can you do this? Are you able to do this? I don't know if you can do this. And just trying to, convince them that, no, actually I can. Like, I can totally do this. I guess, Pat? I don't know.
Any further questions? Yes, go ahead.
My question again is for like everyone. We all have something that keeps us going, like whether that be role models or just like the feeling of teaching. Can you elaborate on what keeps you inspired to teach in the field that you teach in currently?
So I think just teaching in general is one of the best professions that you can have. And I was talking to a student teacher today about it, but just about how, it's a tiring profession, and we put a lot of ourselves into our job, and we are not a 9-to-5 profession. We're always thinking about our students. Our students really become our kids, which is why we say kids. Like, you're all my students. Like, I care about each one of you, and it's tiring, but it's awesome at the same time. And just seeing you guys succeed every single day, whether it's on the marching field, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's, in the band hall. See, I said band hall, not band room. I'm learning. Or if it's in Jones, or if it's anywhere, just seeing you guys succeed. And even if it's just, we have a run through and it wasn't that great, and then, we tweak something, we go back, and just having that progress is just, it's so amazing to just see the joy in all of your faces and your eyes, and just students in general. Like, that's what honestly keeps me going. That I love music, I love what I do, I love band, and those are the things that honestly, it's you guys keep me going.
Okay, well, for me, I'll clap for Dr. Bowman. So I have a few things. I think, like Dr. Bowman was saying, this is personal for us. It's our profession, but it's also personal for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep going. But I think for me, I have things that keep me going with my research and with my teaching. I think having a group of colleagues who are supportive of my work and interacting with them and going to conferences and hearing about new research and meeting with my little circle of fellow Bartok scholars, that helps me keep going with my work, even though it's hard to keep doing that, hard to keep applying for grants and going and traveling to archives and all those things. That kind of keeps that passion going. But the other thing I'll say, and this is something that just happened this week, some of you might know about it. So in Music History 1, some of my students had a test. Well, all the students in that class had a test. And I think it wasn't their favorite test they've ever taken. It was about early music. It's a hard sell. And I know that, but and that's understandable, but people did work hard. But after my teaching block that day, I was feeling, after teaching for several hours, you're just like, you need a second to decompress. And my office door was open. And I heard in the hallway someone singing part of a Benchois chanson. and it was one of the test listenings. And I just thought, oh my gosh, they learned that, and they paid attention, and they might be joking around singing it now, but I don't care. I got through a little. So those kind of moments are important too, and I think anytime students are successful or they can make connections between what's going on in my classes and what their professional goals are, whether it's performing or teaching or whatever the case might be, that's extremely rewarding and meaningful, and helps me continue to be inspired to do what I'm doing.
I would have to agree with Dr. Bovin and Dr. Lucas. The thing that fills my cup is seeing all of my worry and all of my stress, and all of my husband teaches at Rutgers as well. We'll come home and we have the same student in our classes. You're like, I can't believe he did this today. Oh, what are we gonna do? Well, I gotta do office hours. I can't believe this person. And we worry about you like you're part of us, because it is such a personal connection, and art is like inherently a personal thing. It's socially driven, it's emotionally driven, it's tied to so many different facets of the human condition, and I think that's why it's so personal to be a music educator. Those little moments where the light bulb goes off. I'm currently helping. I have a couple of independent study students who are all female conductors. It just happened to turn out like that, and they wanted to get additional education in conducting. So they're taking independent studies with me, and their capstone project for these independent studies is to form their own chamber group and pick music and rehearse it and perform it in some capacity. We just so happen to have this Women in Music event coming up, so they're all gonna apply to be a part of that. And today was everybody's first rehearsal of their chamber group. So to see my students struggle with I have to coordinate all these different calendars. I don't know how many of you have filled out a doodle poll until your eyes were gonna pop out, but trying to find like a calendar time that worked for all these chamber people, and booking the space, and then reading their scores, and then figuring out how to like read the score, do the hands, and then say words that make sense to a group of their peers. Like, it's very intimidating, and to see them go through that and to fight through that and to struggle through that and then still be happy at the end because it was worth it, because there was that beautiful chord that they cued just perfectly. Things like that are the fill the cup moments for me, for teaching, and for my students. I have recognized about myself, though, that for me personally, that's not enough to keep me creatively fed. I need to have my own stuff. I need to have my own research. I need to have a creative outlet that allows me to not only teach well, but also like to perform and be the artist that I went to school for, right? We spend so much time learning our instruments, my instrument being the stick that I hold. And yes, I can teach forever, but what am I if I'm not also developing as an artist for my students? If I'm not truly me in my best sense of the word as an artist, how am I going to pass that on to these students who are looking to me for that advice? So I found out that I have to also creatively feed myself. Starting my own professional chamber groups, doing guest clinics, doing guest conducting things, putting together really innovative concert programming ideas. I'm working on an environmental program where we speak about climate change and like feature artists that have made graphic design and do research in this, and also composers who have written about that issue, and putting that all together in like a creative performance space with like dancers and poets and like a chef that creates food that is like carbon footprint sensitive. Like things like that excite me. And when my students see me excited, they get excited. So it just feeds everybody in the room. I know that I have to be the best version of myself. I have to be the happiest version of myself in order to be the best version for my students. So don't forget about yourself in the process as well. How many music education majors in the room? Oh, got it. Okay. Don't forget about yourself in the process. Us as teachers, we want to give, but understand that there's only so much of you. and you have to replenish. You can't just give, and then not refill. You're gonna dry up. So remember that, and then find whatever that is for you that allows you to refill your cup.
Hello, I have one question. What influenced you all to pursue a PhD, and what advice would you give for like going through that entire process of putting together all of that research?
When I was in high school, I decided I wanted to be a band director. I thought I was going to get a DMA in conducting or something like that. But for a musicologist, you have to go all the way through to get a job, all the way through to the terminal degree, which is the PhD. So that was kind of decided for me in a way. If I really wanted to commit to that profession. I would say if you know you're interested in doing that, I think read recent scholarship, look at the work that's being done, talk to your professors, talk to other professional connections, and talk to them about what their workday is like and what kind of projects they're working on and how that works for them. I think hearing what different people's experiences are like can be really helpful. Early on, I had mentors who did international research, and I knew I needed to get into an archive in Hungary and work on Bartók stuff. And so I knew that very early on, and so I made it my business to start learning Hungarian and to apply for grants, and this took like several years to get there, and I ended up living there for a year and working in the Bartók archive. And that was the reason that I was able to do that as a doctoral student, is because I had supportive mentors, but also I had been talking to people about, well, what do you do and how do you do that? And I figured out what it was that I wanted to do, and I already knew kind of what the steps were to get there. So that's one thing you could try.
For me, I always knew that I was going to be a teacher, that both my parents were teachers. My dad was a woodshop teacher, and my mom was a high school math teacher who just retired a couple years ago. And since she was a math teacher, I was really good at math. And I basically took all of the math classes that I possibly could, and I think I finished them in like 10th grade. Like I was in like Calc 2 in like 10th or 11th grade. And so I didn't know if I was going to be a math teacher or a physics teacher or a music teacher. And my parents felt one way. They wanted me to do either like the math or the science thing, and I was like, yeah, but like I really like band. I was like, I really like I'm having a great time in my high school marching band. Like I really enjoy what I'm doing. I like playing my flute. And I was like, I think I want to be a music major. And they're like, okay. So I'm like, okay. So I went to UConn, and then I realized that not only did I want to be a music teacher, but I really wanted to teach at the collegiate level. I was like, there was something about just teaching teachers that I wanted to teach the next generation of our profession. And I was like, I gotta find a way of how can I do that? So I was like, okay, so I know that I'm gonna have to get a terminal degree, but what degree am I gonna get in the middle? And I really enjoyed my conducting professor for undergrad, and I was like, I really wanna go back and study with him. And in Connecticut, we're required to get our master's to be teachers. After a couple of years, you have to go and get it. So I was like, okay, I gotta get my master's. I think I'm gonna do it in conducting. And I was the first female to get that degree of instrumental conducting at the University of Connecticut, even though it opened up in 1881. I was the first one in 2013. And I was like, this was like another moment where I was like, okay, there's like a pattern here. And I was like, so I definitely want to teach teachers. I want to see if we can, there needs to be more women out there. Like there needs to be more diversity. There needs to be something. Like we need to do this. So I was like, okay. And then I kept, going, and I was like, well, what do I really want to do? And I realized I was doing great with my conducting track. I was making it into workshops. I won 2 international conducting competitions. I conducted around the world, and My resume was just growing with conducting. I was like, I think I'm good on that side. But I really don't know how to write. I'm awful at it. But I'm really interested in some things. Like, I really want to find out more about what's going on in this profession. And I was like, you know what? Also, I'm kind of good at math. And my mom's like, yes, you are. Do something with it. So finally, in my late 20s, my mother was very proud of me. Finally, when I started my PhD, because she knew that it was going to be a math track, and I ended up doing a quantitative dissertation, so it's all math and statistics and everything. And I felt really fulfilled that I was able to use both sides. And I was like, okay, here's my track so that I can teach teachers, that I can not just do the band thing, but I can also go out and, you know, have that experience. And just, you know, like Dr. B said, having, you know, something else to fill my cup. I love research. I love researching. If anyone's been in my office, I have that thing that's over the microwave that says, like, stop ignoring me, just finish. I have all this data that I need to analyze, and I have to put it in, and I have about 10 publications ready to go that I can send out to editors, and I really, really, really enjoy it. So I guess my advice is, if you want to go the PhD route, you really need to like research. You need to like sitting there collecting research, coming up with research projects, and going through that entire process and doing all of that. My dissertation is over 300 pages long that I had to write. And so you're going to have a longer document if you want to do that. It also took me 5 years to get. So I have 12 years of college, 5 for undergrad, 2 for my master's, and then 5 for my PhD. So it's more school, it's a lot, but it's neat to be able to say, I mean, I just really like saying I have one. So like I really like saying I have a PhD because I'm the only one in that hallway that has one, so it's cool. But she's on sabbatical, so it's just me now. So it's just like, yeah, it's really cool to have one and to be able to dip my toes in both of my passions, to be able to conduct and lead bands and be able to work with student teachers now and teach all those classes that I might not have had a chance to do if I got a DMA.
Mine's strange. I didn't want to be a teacher. I call the way I got here a series of happy accidents. And I spent a lot of time fighting, wanting to be a band director. My high school band director, Michael Friedman, who I love him dearly, he's actually the person that married my husband and I. He got ordained and married my husband and I, who were in his high school band together. How nerdy of us. He told all of his students that went to college for music, don't be band directors. He just like flat out said, don't be band directors. He's like, the scheduling is terrible. You'll never make any money. You'll be unhappy like me. Don't be band directors. And then all of us went and became band directors at like very high levels. There's like 7 of us who are in college teaching right now who were his students. So I don't know if he just like flipped the script or like hypnotized us with something, but we all became band directors. My mother is an international business and management professor. And she grew up in extreme poverty, so her concentration is poverty alleviation. This is what my mother does. My mother talks about money constantly because it's in her research, and it's how she got out of it, and now she does all her research in it so that she can help future, countries, like international programs, get out of poverty. So I grew up in a household where you were taught by this very strong woman to be financially independent, that education is power, and you best be able to stand on your own 2 feet with your own resources. Do not depend on somebody else to pay the bills. None of that in my 19-year-old brain, 18-year-old brain translated to be a high school band director. None of that. What I knew was that I could have gone to Boston University, but Florida State gave me more money. There you go, there's the M word, money. So I went there. I started as a BA in music, thinking that I don't know which way I'm gonna go, but I really like this thing and they gave me a music scholarship, so I have to major in music. I'll figure it out when I get there. I was in the marching band there at FSU, and I tried out for like a leadership position. And my band director, Patrick Dunnigan, said to me, you know, there's a deadline coming up for at FSU in your junior year, you have to apply to be in the professional sequence for music education. You're just not in it. You have to go through like an interview process, and they have to say, yeah, you're going to be a great teacher, or maybe you should think about something else. This is in your junior year. He's like, don't forget, you know, all music ed majors have to turn in this paper. I was like, I'm not a music ed major, Dr. Dunnigan. He's like, the heck you aren't. Go change that right now. And like walked me to the admissions office, was like, this needs to be changed. He didn't believe that I wasn't one. And he said, you're really good at teaching in the marching band with this leadership position. I cannot believe that you're not a music education major. You need to be. What are you doing just floating around in this BA world? You need to do this. This is your calling. So I just said yes for some reason, and I became music education major, and I went into my student teaching semester, the last year of my degree, last semester of your degree, you go and you teach full time, thinking like, I'm gonna complete this and maybe I'll get a teaching job, or maybe like I'll figure it out. So I couldn't see myself. And perhaps this is I never had a female band director, especially a Filipino one. So maybe I couldn't picture myself in that position, so it just didn't seem like a place for me. I got placed at a place called J.P. Tarabella High School, which is one of the top programs in the country. And I had a fabulous cooperating teacher, Neil Jenkins, and it was his last year, and he took me on in his last year before retirement. He had already announced his retirement. And I just fell in love with that light bulb moment with students. It's something all teachers say, and it's something that is like the brand of a teacher. Like when your students are in the hallway singing that excerpt that you just tested them on, you're like, I did it. It's amazing. And it's something that I was like, okay, they tricked me. I really like this. And then I'm towards the end of my student teaching semester, and it's at Neil Jenkins's, this is my cooperating teacher's retirement party. And he pulls me aside, and this man had worked at the school for 32 years. He was the school. And he says, hey, this is your congratulations presents for finishing your student teaching semester. Tiny little box, like, you don't have to do this, your party. And like, just open it. It was a key to the band room. Upon his retirement, he said, I would like for you very much to take my position. The students know you, and the thing that's most important to me is that they feel comfortable with somebody through this transition, because the transition of a new band director is always strange. I didn't have a choice. Happy accidents, right? I was sort of pushed down this path that I guess has always been there for me, but I couldn't see it for whatever reason. I taught for 5 years, and then I realized that I was just going through like a checklist, and like things were really good, and Taravella was awesome, but it was a checklist, and I felt like I wasn't better at being a teacher, so my students were kind of hitting a plateau. I said, well, let me see if I could do some summer masters, whatever. And I checked out some programs, and FSU had a great summer master's program that I could afford and all this, and they said, no, you should come full-time for an assistantship. I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, well, that flips everything. So I wound up going full-time for an assistantship. I went for music performance in conducting, because I felt like that's, I had an ed degree. I felt like this is something that I was lacking. So let me go ahead and produce that and get into that a little bit more. And then, sort of like Dr. Bovin was saying, just being able to teach future teachers. And there's something about connecting with that age college student that is particularly exciting to me. I think it's because it's something that's familiar, because it's the thing that happened most recently. I can't really remember high school, and I don't want to remember middle school. But college was, I feel a lot for these students having gone through the program that I was now a grad student for them in that same program. So I stayed through. Most people in that program stay through with the idea that to teach in the college world, you probably have to have a terminal degree. It's just how the market is right now for music education. The terminal degree at FSU is a philosophy, I have to look at my degree because it's like a lot, a doctorate in philosophy in music education with an emphasis in instrumental conducting. It's too many words. What that essentially means is that you get a PhD and you get all the music ed stuff, but you also get this incredible conducting experience, like a dual thing. So I sort of have the ed chops and the DMA chops, like combined into one degree. And there's very select places, schools in the country that do that sort of thing. I think oh, I want to say Michigan State is a place that does that. FSU is a place that does that. Rutgers is a place that does that, but it's like very specific. A lot of times, depending on the program you go to, you have to choose one side or the other. So I guess my advice to you is, depending on where you go, always choose to study with people. Music is music no matter where you go, so you want to find the right people for you to study with. Dr. Bovin alluded that she really, really liked her conducting teacher, and that was a valuable experience for her. So go to that person who are your people. You're going to get a better education when it's somebody who's there for you. Because at the end of the day, in the college world, if your mentor doesn't make the phone call for you, a lot of times you're going to get passed up for that college gig. I have wonderful mentors who will call a lot for me if I want to go somewhere. And I have a lot of people who are friends who got great education, but their mentor does not pick up the phone and does not make the phone call, and they get passed up for positions that they would do well in. So my advice to you, if you want to go get that terminal degree, is find the person for you. It is a really strong relationship that you're going to form, because you're going to be writing so much and you're going to be doing all these things. So you want it to be a good relationship.
So something you said just made me think of something. If you are looking to be a college band director and do the band thing to get a terminal degree, if you go the PhD route, know that you're going to be competing for people that have DMAs. So that you need to have the conducting chops in order to be on the same level as them as well. So if you want to do the musicology thing, then you don't need to worry about the conducting stuff. But if you want to be some sort of college band director, you're either going to need to do like a master's in conducting like we have, or some sort of dual degree to have like the DMA chops at the same time. But because that's who you're competing against for jobs. So you maybe just think of that. You don't have to clap for that one, that's okay.
Being the first female band director at Rutgers, and Dr. Bovin being the first female marching band director, and Dr. Lucas, please feel free to share your experiences. Is there anything like you expected and it was just wildly different starting your job? And any advice you could give starting a job somewhere different and uncomfortable?
Dr. Bree, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can't really see you, so I'm like waiting, like,
Oh, I just keep
That's
looking
fine.
at you, and I'm like, I don't even know if she can see me. I'm like, just
I
like
have a
staring at,
feeling
like,
that
you're
I'm-
like 30 feet tall right now, by the way.
That's what I was afraid of, that I was like this giant Oz face, like.
Yeah, you pretty much are. It's okay. You look fantastic. So, like, we're cool. Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, to answer your question, I actually didn't find out that I was the first band director at Rutgers until I came here, and people were like, they hired a woman! Yeah! And I was like, yay, they did. Oh, that's me. Yeah. Okay. And I shouldn't be surprised at this point, right? I've been the first female band director literally every position that I've ever worked in. Fine, whatever. What I am pleasantly surprised about is how supportive people have been. I am new. I've never lived in the Northeast. I did most of my schooling and teaching in the South in Florida, and then between here and my degree, I taught at the University of Central Missouri, which is in Warrensburg, Missouri.
It's 28 miles from where Dr. Lucas grew up.
Fantastic. Okay, so you know Warrensburg. Oh my God, I've never met a person that's like knows more. Anyways, okay, we'll talk later. I am constantly surprised, and I'm constantly surprised by the support here and the forward thinkingness of here, and then I'm surprised with myself that I'm surprised. And I think it's because I've set myself up for the worst case scenario, because I've heard all the stories of my colleagues. And I've heard my mother in general has gone through a tremendous amount of sexism. She, again, is a business professor, so if you could think of like the CEO world, that's where she came from. She's 5'0" and she's a Filipino immigrant. And she used to be mistakenly called the nanny when we were little. Like, they thought she was the nanny for her own children. So she's been put through the ringer, and I've seen her my entire life people try to make her as small as possible. And even though she's 5'0", there is nothing in this world that can make that woman small. She is also an Army veteran. She joined the US military so that she can get a GI Bill so that they can pay for her education, because she believes education is freedom. She has trophies of being able to unlock, unload, clean, load, lock, shoot with the fastest speed and accuracy gun trophies from the military. Don't mess with, and she's also Dr. Malmanis, so she calls herself Dr. B the OG. Don't mess with Dr. B the OG. So I've seen her go through these things, and I've seen her come home and cry because somebody would call the house looking for Dr. Balmanis and refuse to speak to my mother because they believed it was my father, who was Dr. Balmanis. I've seen this happen. So I guess I've set myself up for the worst case scenario, and I guess what I'm most surprised about is that it's been wonderful. In all the places that I've worked, I have to chalk it up to, if you know, get to your advice part of this question, to find the people who are going to champion you, your most authentic self. What you don't want to do is try to fit the mold of something that you think somebody will hire, and then you have to get there and you have to stay within that mold. That's uncomfortable, and that's not fair to you. There is a place for all of us in this world to be us and to do what we love to do. You just have to find the people who are willing to love you and accept you for that. And it's a lot of places. You just have to find them. So go to those conferences. Go to things like this. Form things like this. Get on these online forums and find people like you who are doing what you do in different parts of the country and different parts of the world, and become part of that environment, become part of that community, because that's how you're going to find your people outside of where you are right now. You all have so many awesome resources to you that we didn't have growing up. I remember when the internet came. I remember when cell phones started to be a thing and texting was removed from pressing the one button for the letter C 3 times. I remember those things. You all have a wealth of knowledge at your fingertips instantaneously, so use it. Find those people, and you'll find a place that's very supportive of who you are and what you do.
Okay, and I got it. Okay. So I agree with so much stuff that you said that I didn't realize it until after I accepted the job. And then I was talking to Dr. Jones. I was like, wait, am I the first female that's worked here? He goes, I think you're the first female in the entire Texas A&M system. And I was like, what? So we went and we did a really quick Google search, because when the announcement came out, we knew that it was going to hit, and it was going to go it was the most famous I've ever been. It was great for 12 hours. I was living large for 12 hours. And then it was that I'm the first female head marching band director of any Texas A&M system. And I was like, oh, that's really crazy. But at the same time, I wasn't surprised, because I've been the first female in every single position I've done, and almost every degree I've gotten, and everything. So I really wasn't that surprised. And so I think what I was surprised about was how my walls were all the way up, and how quickly I was able to bring them down because of just how welcoming everybody was. And then just the support, you were talking about the support. I mean, we talk about it all the time, but Mr. Moncada and Dr. Jones, that they welcomed me into our little band director trio that we have, our Triforce thing that we got going on. And it just, and every once in a while I have had to bring them up at times for things, but for the most part, I was able to pretty much tear down a lot of walls that I had up, that I've had a lot of, and I'll just say it, I've had a lot of very traumatic experiences in this profession, actual diagnosed trauma and PTSD from this profession, and a lot of sexism, a lot of ageism, and then most recently a lot of anti-Semitism. And that honestly was the thing that I was a little bit more worried about, because I knew I was going to be the only Jew down here. And I knew, I searched, and Corpus Christi is a couple synagogues, but it's that's way too far away. So I'm like, okay, so I'm just not going to go to synagogue. Like, we're going to be okay with that because I'm pretty reform anyway. Religiously, like cultural wise, it's in my DNA. So like, I can't get away from that. And what's been really cool is that you guys have just accepted my culture, and like, you know, for the brothers and sisters that have celebrated like Hanukkah with me, and like now like a bunch of you know how to play dreidel. And like the saxophones, I think we discovered have like a gambling issue. So we might need to work on that with the dreidel thing. But yeah, it's really, you know, like find those people. Oh, and I'm the second Dr. Bovin too, so I'm 2.0 because my cousin is the original Dr. Bovin, so I'm 2.0. And at some point we're gonna do a study together, so we have the Bovin study. So it'll be like really, really cool. She has a PhD in psychology. And so it's find those people that you really like to work with, and that, you know, find that community, you know, like Dr. Lucas and I, like we're friends, right? Okay. I'm like, you're sitting there, I'm like, okay. You know, and like Mr. Bancada is like one of my closest friends here. And, you know, Dr. Jones I consider a friend too, and like so many people, and like Dr. Diaz, and, you know, like we're buddies, and it's just, it's cool to have that and to just feel so welcoming. And even going to TMEA, and, you know, that was my first TMEA. I've never been able to go, and it was awesome. And just seeing so many people just welcome me into Texas. And I'm really sad that I missed the WBDI thing, Women Band Directors International. I missed that because I put the wrong date in my calendar, so that's on me. But it's just find those welcoming environments and find the people that can, you know, really support you, and know that, you know, we all have trauma and it's real and it's a real thing. But the more that you get, you know, you can find ways to get past it if you're in a healthy work environment. And what I think is pretty cool is that the two Dr. B's here, we're not the only ones this year that are the first female band directors in their position. There was a whole bunch of us, right? Like Shannon, right? I think she was the first, Dr. Shaker. And there was a couple of us. So this like new class of people that just got positions in 2021, there's like, we're not the only two, there's a whole bunch. And so it's pretty cool that we have this kind of this like sisterhood of us, of these like female band directors that we're all in our first year at our positions, and we're all the first female. So it's like, it's pretty cool to have that bond as well.
Well, I'm not the first anything, but
You're the first you.
there we go. But I will say, I can say a little bit about, you know, starting a new job. I would say that, especially when you're early in your career, if there are opportunities, say yes. Eventually, you have to put a limit on that, and that's important too. But say yes, because you'll learn so much, and you'll get to meet new people. You might get to, whether that's, I don't know, being some kind of advisor for a group, whether it's being nominated for an officer in a professional organization, whether it's just, I don't know, doing a band clinic or helping out a student with particular lessons, or whatever the case may be. Say yes, and you'll learn a lot, I think. And I've learned a lot here, saying yes to things, and so I think that's helpful. I think I've had, I'll say I've had really helpful colleagues here, and welcoming ones, and supportive ones, and that goes a couple different ways. I have colleagues who are applied professors who are interested in, how can the musicology and music theory classes support what we're doing in our lessons and things like that, and that's great. And being able to talk with those colleagues about those issues, and trying to help every student reach their professional goals by collaborating, or at least supporting each other's efforts. That's a really good thing. So I think if you start a new job, try to make those connections and learn as much as you can to support whatever institution it is that you're working for, and to ultimately support students if what you're doing is teaching.
time for one more question.
Is it easier to hear with the mask or without the mask on? Okay.
You're good.
Dr. Bowden, in your article, Breaking the Silence, how did you come up with and do research for the 9 themes that you talk about, and what obstacles did you come across during your research?
So my article, it's a qualitative research technique called a phenomenology, where you're trying to find the essence of something. So like I was trying to find the essence of what it meant to be a female band director. So what I did is in Connecticut, we have 8 different counties. So I took one band director from every county in Connecticut. I just kind of like, I put out like a sign-up sheet at CMEA, so Connecticut MEA, of like who wants to, be part of a study and stuff. And I tried to get enough participants that I had as varied of participants as possible, so that I could have like a whole range. So like I had people from like from a ton of different like sexual identities. I had a whole bunch of ages. I had a whole bunch of experiences. So I tried to do something like that. And in a phenomenology, so at whichever qualitative technique that you do, there's always some sort of theory that goes with it. So the one that I did, it's called Mustaka's is the guy that does it, and it's 3 interviews. So I basically just followed what you have to do if you're doing like a qualitative study. And from that, so you do 3 different interviews. They all should be, I did like 45 minutes each, and I did a semi-structured interview format, which means that I had some questions, but that we made it conversational. So there's different types of interview formats. And then you go through, you get all of, you record all of the interviews, and then one of the hardest parts is you have to transcribe all the interviews. So you have to go through and type out every single thing that happened. So I had 22 because 2 people couldn't make the last one. Or, 3 times 8. Yeah, so 22 because 2 people couldn't make the last one because it was in February, and in Connecticut there was just like so much snow, and like with snow days and all these changes and stuff. And so I had to type up at least about 45-minute interviews. It just was a lot of typing. But then once you get that, what you do is I put it into a program called Deduce, but you can do it in totally different ways, and you go through and you code for themes. So you look at different themes that are starting to come up, like different words that people are saying, different things that they're talking about. And some of them are, you can have in something called an in vivo theme, which is something that someone actually talked about, or like that they said, or just like a general theme. So I went through and I started just coding, and then the themes just honestly started popping up. And so once you get all those themes start to pop up, then you start to just really pare down some stuff and see, okay, what's really going on. And once you keep paring down your data, that's how the 9 themes formed. So in the 9 themes, I believe it's 7 of them applied to all 8 participants, and the last 2 just applied to, I think, like 6 or something. So I put them in order of the strongest themes to the least strongest themes. And, but a lot of them, like I said, it applied to almost everybody. The last 2, I decided to make it themes, even though it didn't apply to everyone, just because of how strong it was for the ones that were there, that it appeared in there so many times. So it's this whole process of basically I just kind of followed the book of how to do a phenomenology. There we go. Phenomenology. I still don't know how to spell it either. So it's just, a phenomenology. And then that's what I took to make my dissertation, that I turned it into a survey. And so all the questions, I did a survey and I looked at the themes, and and then my dissertation took off from that. And because I wanted to get the raw data, the actual statistical data to back up what these 8 women came up with. So, does that answer your question? Okay. Are you scared? You look scared now. Okay. Vicente, you have to ask a question. Just yell it out. Think of something.
I went blank. I had a question, but I guess how hard was it doing your dissertation
how hard was it? It was, I mean, it was pretty difficult. But there's some lovely, wonderful things that happened during my dissertation writing. I don't know how to sort of address that exactly, but I will say I had 3 years of coursework before I had my major like research and writing years. But during that time, I was already developing my project, then sort of laying the groundwork for being able to do the research that I wanted to do. So I was applying for grants and doing preliminary research and reading all the secondary scholarship related to my topic. Then I went to Hungary twice, and the one thing that was very hard was making connections in Budapest, actually initially. That was something that was difficult to make those initial contacts. But after I did, then people were very helpful to me, and I was able to come back again for a longer period to do work there. So that was an obstacle. But then I think the writing, you have to be okay being by yourself for a long time. You have to be pretty disciplined, and so that can be difficult. If you're somebody who can't be alone, then that makes it very difficult. Although I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I think I was working on my dissertation for 3 years, so it was a big commitment. During that time, I was also doing some teaching as a TA and other things, but it's a big commitment. But it's difficult. It's also rewarding. I will say that it was worth it in the end.
Dr. B, you want to go?
Mine's just stupid. The current dissertation that's published under my name is dissertation number 4. I told you about dissertation number 2, which was the conducting baton. Dissertation number 1 was this just like cockamamie idea that wasn't going to go anywhere, and I wrote like half the paper, and I was like, this is ridiculous, and then I found out somebody else had done a better job at the similar topic, so I had to punt there. Dissertation number 2, which is still a project, that Conductors baton that I'm working on, obviously that was out of my control. Dissertation number 3, because now we're getting down to, I did my PhD degree in 3 years. So you got to think about it. I spent a year on dissertation number 1. I spent half the year on dissertation number 2, right? So we're down to like a year and a half left of school. Dissertation number 3 was going to involve this process called IRB, which is a process in which if you were going to involve humans at all, like speaking to humans or testing like an instrument or theory out or talking to, you have to go through an IRB approval. It's basically put in place to make sure we're not harming people as part of our research. It was not going to make it in time because again, I'm down to a year and a half of my schooling, so I punted to a dissertation that did not require any human interaction, and I wrote it all the spring break of my last semester in doctoral school. I'm the worst person to ask this question for because I did everything wrong. So if you find my dissertation, it's a supplement to a conducting textbook. There's lots of conducting textbooks. Probably one that you're familiar with is the Elizabeth Green textbook. It's like blue in color and it has a lady going ooh in the front, right? There's a lot of things about conducting that we don't talk about, especially like from a leadership standpoint. Especially when it comes to like how to actually teach future conductors how to use your face. I only did research that made me frustrated. So I did research on gender studies because that survey about what are you going to wear on the podium, everybody figure out what women have to wear on the podium. That I did a study on that. Does it matter what you wear on the podium? The answer is no, it doesn't. Everybody heard the same recording and there was no changing, whatever. And then I did the conductor's baton because my conducting teacher yelled at me that I wish you had a baton that looked the way, that sounded the way you looked because you look ridiculous. So I did research on that, right? So the last frustrating topic that I tackled in research was I wish conducting textbooks would go a little bit deeper as to what happens beyond the notes on the page, what happens beyond the beat patterns, what happens beyond the look like you are walking through the park and smelling the roses. And I was like, cool, but how do I get my ensemble to sound better? Like there's a lot of things that are left out and a lot of things that we kind of just have to figure out on our own. And luckily we have teachers that can teach us those things. But in the moment, a textbook, a curriculum for this, as somebody who like now teaches undergraduate conducting, what can I send my students home with that's a practical application that talks about real stuff? Not just the technique part of it, which is very important, but there's so much more beyond that. That's what my dissertation is currently. Talk to me in like 3 years, maybe I'll have dissertation number 6. I don't know, it's ridiculous.
So for me, my whole research track of the women in band director thing just came from, I just wanted to know if what I was experiencing, other people were experiencing as well. So my dissertation was pretty much all of that 5 years in the making that I really honestly, so a dissertation has different chapters. Chapter 2 is your literature review. I basically started writing chapter 2 for my very first assignment in my PhD, like in the reading and writing class or whatever that you have to take, like get to know the library, which every time you go to or you start a new degree, you got to take a class of like get to know the library, and like every single one. And so during that's when I really started writing my chapter 2. And then I just kept expanding upon it. And then I did my phenomenology, and then I just really kept working. So it really did take me 5 years. But I did my coursework in 4 years. And then my dissertation, I did what you should never do. So I was doing my dissertation when I was the head band director of probably the largest band program in the state of Connecticut. And I was president of Connecticut MEA. And I was writing a dissertation. So the best thing ever happened to me, COVID. So I got to write because I lived outside of New York City and I wasn't able to leave my apartment for 10 weeks. So I was in my apartment and I was like, well, I can't really do anything else. So let's write my dissertation. And while trying to figure out how to teach band online and run a state through a pandemic. But it was like, it was a lot of long hours. I binged watched the entire series up to the point of RuPaul's Drag Race. I just had it on, the whole thing, like just going. And I was like, I needed something on the TV like all hours. But the way that I did it and I kept myself from overworking is that I would get everything done that I had to do for my job before noon. I would take a break from noon until 1. I would take a nap from 1 until 2. And then I would unplug my computer and write until my computer died. And I wouldn't write with the computer plugged in because then I wouldn't know how long I was writing for. So I would just write and analyze data until my computer died. And as soon as that died, then I went to bed and woke up the next day and did it again and did that for weeks, months, really. And I was able, to finish during COVID. But it was a lot, but it was also very, very, very rewarding. Like we would, I'm sure that like these two ladies also had those moments when you're looking at stuff and you have that moment and you have that mini celebration with like my cat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this data and it's aligning and it's amazing and look at this. And like, so I had these like mini celebrations and, and someone said that one of the best ways to get through any graduate degree is to celebrate everything. So I was like, I'm celebrating that. Like that is one number that I can write one sentence about, boom, 300 pages to go. And it was like, I just kind of kept doing that and it was so rewarding. But it really was 5 years in the making and I probably would have taken longer if not for COVID, honestly.
Can we get one more hand for these amazing speakers? that concludes tonight's event. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming as well.
Yay, thank you for having us.
Everyone have a good night.
Yay. Yeah, yeah, of course. Okay. Julia, I'll text you at some point.
Hey.
I have an idea for the
We're going to take a picture.
conducting baton thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, so, okay. Oh, we're taking a picture?
Yes,
We're
Dr.
taking a
Bauman is,
picture?
don't live yet.
Okay.
Don't leave yet.
Oh, we're not allowed to leave. We're taking a picture.
Okay.
Okay.